And just like all of us, he had imperfections. And God, through his mercy, can get rid of all those imperfections, but it takes time. It's not that God is playing favorites, it's just that, some people, because of circumstances, because of their own free will, they never quite measure up to that. But, well, we'll find out. When I die, I'll find out. And then we'll do our hunting again.
For me, the hardest part of that was in just telling the kids, because I don't want people to think that my brother is somehow a bad person, because that, being in a strip club when he died does not take away from all the amazing things that he did throughout his life. I think what happens is that people find closure in different ways. And even in watching my family and their grief process and their in the impact of all of this and watching them, we all have dealt with it in so many different ways. And maybe some of us haven't dealt with it or are still dealing with it, in different ways. For me, I don't know what possessed me to want to figure it all out, but since really the beginning, I've had this really strong desire to figure it out.
I have forgiven the guy that did it. I pray for the guy that did it, and I hope that his life will be changed for the better afterwards. I know that people change because God changed me. I don't think we can change on our own. I think only God can do it. But I was a drug addict and a criminal for 27 years, and now I'm, in ministry. So I know that, people can change.
To forgive Carl, I think it's just gonna take time. Because if it was Steve that was still alive and it had happened to my mom, I don't know how he would have reacted. Like, I almost feel like then he would be out for revenge. So I almost feel like saying, oh, it's okay for you to have killed my uncle, So, I don't know. I think it's just gonna take a lot of time.
Never. I'm definitely okay with how they feel about it, if they want to forgive him, but I don't see myself forgiving him right now, and later on how I feel, I don't know.
To me, forgiveness and what Therese, the journey that she's been through, to go through that, I have so much respect for her. And as far as forgiving Carl and everything, her and I have sat down and talked about things, and she's kind of made me feel like it is okay to forgive. It's okay to be angry. Can't control everything in life, so forgiveness is really the only thing that we can give people.
Yeah, I think, I don't only think against my mom or them or anything, but I think it's disrespectful to Steve to forgive him.
Master of Science in Criminal Justice. Therese Leone Bartholomew. Michelle Guido. Courtney Lee Morrison. Susan Madeline Schleider. Leslie Easy.
If I genuinely believe that all of this stuff is gonna help somebody else, it's gonna help change things, it's gonna help someone else deal with a similar loss, then that helps me to heal.
And I guess I'm more and more drawn into it through Therese's career path. Through her going to school in criminal justice and meeting Dr. Arrigo and really starting to understand all of those facts. You know, I come from this extremely conservative, very judgmental background, and Therese comes from this other side. You know, so we have these two totally opposite perspectives that come together around the event of Steve's death in a very, what becomes sort of a fairly focused direction.
The system is really flawed, and you know what happened for me is that all of this, the essays, the film project, the criminal justice degree, which in a million years I never would have imagined myself getting, but all of those things for me have not really been, I don't think, unless subconsciously, they haven't been ways for me to find closure. They've been ways for me to understand. I don't believe that there is really ever closure. And I'm not saying that you don't learn how to recreate yourself and that you don't learn how to live in what you have and you don't learn to accept and all of that stuff. But 6.5 years later, I would trade many of the people that I know for my brother back. So maybe I don't have closure if that's the case. Now, do I have a sense of peace and a sense of understanding? Absolutely. And I believe I can share that with other people and help them to get to that place of peace and understanding. At the time that I saw Carl for the first time, I had no idea that there was anything called restorative justice. I just knew that I saw humanity in this person, and I was very curious, and I wanted to meet him. So I had this really strong drive from really the beginning to meet him and to understand him. But what I found is about 1.5 years after Steve was killed, I found this thing called restorative justice.
Therese has been a student in a few of the courses that I teach at the graduate level. And she's one of those rare students that makes you humbled to be a professor. I say that because teaching students has its challenges like any other profession. And occasionally you find students who really have a certain passion. And so it's in that context that I realized that she was worth getting to know.
So there are all these things that are going on right now. And I just have to be strong and make it through this, because I started all of this. I started every piece of it, and I've brought all these people along with me, and I just have to see it all the way through, and I just have to suck it up and have to be okay with it. Oh, I just am terrified right now.
All crime victims are really very dissimilar. Therese really, her motivation, she's, I think, pretty unique person. I really do. She has no questions whatsoever about the crime itself, which I think is pretty unique with crime victims. Oftentimes they want to know what their last words were, what happened is really, really big question. She doesn't have that at all. So I think that makes Therese unique.
And part of who I am and who I've been for as many years as I can remember, I've always tried to figure out what the meaning, what the purpose is. Because I believe that there has to be purpose. There has to be purpose in all of these things that happen, the great things, the horrible things, the huge things, the tiny little things. There has to be some meaning and some purpose in those things. And so to me, that's how the healing really comes, is when you start to see that, when you start to say, God, this is why I went through this.
While crime is real, and while the harm that it causes is profoundly personal, that harm and that reality confronts us all. Not just the family members of the person who's the victim, not just the family members of the person who's an offender. It reminds us that crime is intimate and personal for everyone, and we often forget that.
It's something that people don't really want to talk about a lot of times. People don't want to talk about crime, what we want to do is we want to lock people up, the bad guys up, and we want to have the good people out on the street, and then we want to not worry about it anymore.
Right now in the United States, we really have a prison policy of warehousing prisoners, which is why our recidivism rates are so high. Somebody's likened it to the fact that if you have a pit bull in your neighborhood that's biting people, and you put him in a cage for 2 or 3 months and just poke him with a stick every once in a while, you really can't expect him to come out being a better dog in the community than he was when he went in. And that's true with prisoners. We're taking a lot of people, we're putting them in prison, and we poke them a little bit, you know, to kind of teach them a lesson. And they're coming out more antisocial, more criminally savvy, more bitter, more cynical, with less hope than they went in.
I tend to think of crime as a symptom of a series of larger problems, not the least of which is the difficulty people have with getting along with one another. And I think it's easy to point to instances of crime. Someone shot me, or shot one of my family members. Someone stole something from me. I think those things are easier to point to and to draw some conclusions about. But my feeling is that those conclusions are really incomplete and therefore inadequate. The larger concern is really about justice and about peace and about nonviolence, and the difficulty people have with focusing on those kinds of concerns.
How do you meld all of that together to make a society that's worth living in, and how do we fix all of these huge problems that we have by just locking people up, putting them in a cage, and like Mark Early says, just poking them with a stick for a few years? What are we doing, and what are we teaching our children?
I do hope that Mr. Staton has received counseling or whatever kind of help he needs, because when he comes out and he's 30, he's going to have this on his record and this to live with for the rest of his life. And that is not going to be easy. I'm sure it's not easy in jail, and it's not going to be easy back on the street when he gets out.
You know, just our sense of responsibility for other human beings. You know, we have prisons that are overflowing with people, and the majority of those people are going to come back into our society. And the question is, how will they come back? And you can't tell me that that doesn't affect every person. We are, or I'm in the process of contacting all these different people about getting into the prison and how to do that correctly.
I'm a big supporter of victim offender mediation and dialogue. It's some of the most rewarding work that a person can do. And so when you can bring both of those two parties together such that those goals can be met, everyone gets to leave there feeling some sense of accomplishment or being forgiven if that's what happens. It doesn't always, it doesn't have to.
I think that for the first time in several years, I can actually handle that. And I don't think that I could have even a year ago. So I think the timing is really perfect. Now it's just a matter of kind of handling the anxiety that goes along with all of that.
And I took myself through the same process that a victim would go through. It was the most intense, draining experience I've been through. And so I gained an appreciation. I could never, ever put myself in the role of a victim who has lost a loved one. I don't know how to do that, but I can appreciate some of the feelings and the difficulty a person has and the desire one would have to get to another point in life, to finish the grieving process and to bring about some healing.
I just can't imagine if I go through all of this and then I end up hurting somebody in my family, especially one of my children. I just can't even imagine.
It takes a lot of preparation for a crime victim to get to the point where she does something as traumatic and meaningful as meeting her loved one's murderer.
Hi, Josh. This is Therese Bartholomew. I'm contacting you regarding a film project that we're working on currently. The goal of the film is to show the impact of
Victims are brought to a place in life that they didn't ask to be, and they are introduced to people that they wouldn't have chosen to be a part of their lives, but they are.
One of the greatest tragedies about crime is so often the victim becomes a victim for life with no hope of restoration. Just like the prisoner can become a prisoner for life with no hope of change. And both of those things in my mind are unacceptable. And so to get smart on crime means you're tough on criminals when you need to, but you always give them a chance to change if it's appropriate. And with victims, you try to be as sensitive as you can, but hold out to them the opportunity to participate in a process that can bring healing and restoration if that's appropriate for them, and that's their call.
My thoughts of her meeting with Carl, I honestly kind of knew that she would, because to me, Therese is that kind of person.
This has made me who I am. I mean, here I am, I've become this very strong and outspoken advocate, not just for victims, but for offenders. Who would have ever thought that? They know that you've, been meeting Carl and that kind of stuff, but just to kind of get an overview of what you've been doing with him, that kind of stuff.
My role, like I was saying, is I'm just there for her and for him. I'm right in the middle. I came to a point where I felt like it was time. Therese, it's been time for her to meet with them. She wanted to meet with them today. But it was a really important thing for him to be ready as well. And so that's my role. I'm not there just for Therese. Of course, this is all victim-centered. It always has to be the victim wants to do this. But my role has also been to explain to Therese who Carl is and to explain to Carl who Therese is, and pretty intimately, so that they're not in there completely shocked about what each other's going to say.
And restorative justice and victim offender dialogue really is what can help put in that missing piece of the puzzle. Which to me, when you start looking at whether a person may reoffend or not, is a huge piece that needs to be put into place. And it's something that the traditional system just can't do. Mm-hmm. So people like Veronica and me try to step in there and put that last piece in there. The ability not only for the victim to get some answers and get to a point maybe in a healing process that they couldn't get to without this sort of thing.
That's right.
And not everybody needs this, but some people, it can be one of the most beneficial things that they could do for the healing process, I think. But also to see the effect that it can have on an offender who finally gets to see the humanity behind the terrible thing that they have done. For that reason, can begin to hold themselves accountable for what they've done.
Questions about what we're going to do tomorrow, what that's going to be like, or
I don't really have any questions. I can't wait to see the interview, what becomes of that.
Yeah.
What his personality is like, if that's going to show through with his interview, or I'm just interested to see.
So Trey, do you have any?
I'll let you know what he has to say about that night. That's really all.
Well,
I don't have the same.
Yeah, the interest that she has.
Yeah, I don't really care about that one.
Why does it take 7 years?
Oh, that's a good question. It doesn't always take 7 years. Therese is going to be the first person in our whole state of South Carolina to do it. The process, when it actually gets down to a face-to-face meeting, I say a whole lot of stuff at first. It's actually a script to be read, so that everybody can kind of settle down a little bit. I will be reading and explaining what we're doing, so it's kind of really formal. Again, developing trust is huge. It's the only way for people to be honest, and so that they can trust me that they can be honest and talk about things that really hurt. They're talking about painful stuff, and nobody wants to do that.
No matter what Carl says, he is responsible for what he did that night. He's responsible.
It is one of the strongest testimonies to the viability of the restorative justice model. Where we see it happening today in a very effective and profound way that almost defies words is in Rwanda, a country that was torn apart by genocide a number of years ago. So it can happen in violent crimes. It's difficult, but it can happen.
but I'm just worried. You know, I never thought I'd be down to the hour and thinking about, should I go or should I not go? But I'm really thinking that maybe I shouldn't go. So I'm really nervous. I don't feel anything like what I thought that I would feel like. I've prepared myself for this for years, but I guess maybe some part of me felt like it would never really happen.
I just want to show that this is a process that is long and involved for a reason, to help the victim and the offender come to a meaningful meeting. You can't just walk into a prison and not be impacted by that. You can't sit down in front of an offender with no preparation, somebody who has caused you great harm, in many different ways it can be. You can't not just sit there without a facilitator, without some preparation, without the offender being prepared, and walk away from that with any meaningful, in a meaningful way.